information today in a reasonable period of time. We'll try to operate on rotary rules and get you out of here by 1 o'clock. I think I always stay on this side of the door around 1 o'clock to make sure you don't get run over when you're in the parking lot. My name is Randy Zook. I'm president of the Arkansas State Chamber of Commerce and Associated Industries of Arkansas. Welcome to our facility. Many of you are familiar with us and with the building. There are restrooms here and restrooms outside that door, so feel free. This is a working meeting. This is not a lecture. This is a conversation, hopefully, about a very important subject that we'll get into in real detail as the discussion unfolds. But let me first introduce my colleague, Kenny Hall, who's Executive Vice President of the State Chamber, and also I'd like to recognize Ed Drilling, who is currently serving as Chairman of the Arkansas State Chamber of Commerce, along with Bill Hanna with Nabholz Construction, who is Chairman of the Associated Industries of Arkansas, part of our operation. This is a subject which has been under intense scrutiny and has had a lot of discussion over the last couple of years. As you know, due to the nearly unprecedented depth and breadth of the recession, essentially beginning in 2008, our unemployment insurance trust fund, the state trust fund, is in debt to the federal government because we ran out of the trust fund and had to begin to get advances from the Department of Labor to fund the state unemployment benefit. And let me make crystal clear that today we are focusing only on the trust fund and the payment of the state unemployment insurance benefit, which up until now has been a maximum of 26 weeks to people, payments to people who are unemployed. This does not address any of the issues surrounding extended unemployment benefits. Those are completely funded by the federal government, and at the state level, we have nothing to do with either funding them or determining the availability of those extended benefits. So we are focused on the State Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund, which is administered by the Department of Workforce Services, and which is the responsibility of the Arkansas business or employer community. It's not just the business community, it's anybody who is an employer and is not under direct pay, like state government employees, are exempt from this consideration. So, with that said, I think let me turn it over to Kenny. He will walk you through a lot of the groundwork and kind of get the discussion teed up, and then we'll talk about a couple of alternatives and some projections as to the potential or possible ways to pay for this. Some of the projections that we have received in just the last couple of days. So, Kenny.
Thank you all for being here. I'm a little nervous today. I am used to talking about this subject to legislators and the lobbyists who probably know less than I do about this subject. But looking at the list of people here today, I think we've got UI experts from our corporate members, and don't hurt me too bad if I say something that sounds a little silly. So I've tried over the last 2 years to learn as much as I can about this subject, but it's quite a challenge. Me and 4 other of our members sit on an advisory council with the Department of Workforce Services, so historically the legislation related to this issue has been negotiated through that council. This is a different legislation, and recognized Representative David Sanders being here today. Thank him for being here. We wound up with not being able to reach agreements and had to develop our own legislation, which I'll get to in a minute. We start with clarifying some of the origins of what this is, maybe what it is not. The unemployment insurance program was birthed in 1935 as part of the Social Security program, and the key point is that it's designed to be paid for by employees. Keep that in mind through this whole process, is that the original intent and the current structure of this whole system, which is a federal-state partnership, is that it has to be paid for by employers. Another key point is the state trust fund, which we're here today to discuss, Arkansas Trust Fund, is not a part of the state general revenue budget. It's not part of the state's revenue process whatsoever. In speeches we made, I've had people say, isn't it unconstitutional for the state to be in debt, or to have a balanced budget? It is supposed to have a balanced budget, but this is not part of that budget. Now, how do you pay for this? All employers, or I guess most employers in Arkansas, there's some issues with public employers about how they pay unemployment insurance. But private employers pay a tax rate that's applied to the first $12,000 of wages for each employee, and that's called the wage base. The new employers, 3 years and under, pay 2.9%. Employers that have been in existence more than 3 years pay a tax rate based upon their experience, how many people have they laid off over the years, and that rate varies between 1/10% up to 10%. And then at different times, there can be add-ons to that tax rate. The stabilization tax rate is added on times when the trust fund balance declines. And when you're in debt, you're at the max, and you've been at the max 0.8 for quite a while. Extended benefits tax, I'll be honest with you, I've yet to figure out what that is, but we've been paying it for a while. It may be about to roll off. I even asked the DWS people Monday, and I just didn't understand their answer. You're paying 1/5 or something. Now, because we're in debt, when you're in debt to the federal government charges you interest. And the way that the federal government gets its interest is each state has a requirement that they charge 0.2% to generate interest, and that goes into a separate fund so that it has money to pay the federal government that interest amount. Now, if it overcollects, and then the numbers Randy will show you later, possibility of the overcollection, then that will benefit our trust fund. Lastly, just threw up the average. Ironically, it has nothing to do with that number. It just happens to be the same. The average rate in Arkansas is 2.9% right now. Now, in addition to paying the state, you also pay the federal government. Their wage base, where ours is 12,000, theirs is 7,000, and their tax rate is 6.2%. However, if you make your state tax payments, then you will get a credit of 5.4% on your federal taxes, putative tax, which leaves the effective rate at 0.8%.
I'm confused, is everybody?
Can we get a copy of
Yeah,
this?
it's in your hand. Oh, thank you, Monty. On each table is one of these which has a picture of every slide. These boring ones that I'm doing, I put really, really small, and the fun ones that Randy's going to do, I put really, really big, mainly because they're full of numbers. At any rate, so 8 cents times $7,000 is what you should be paying for your federal tax rate. Now, Randy, later when you start discussing options, one of the options that's an unknown in this whole discussion is what Congress might do with this debt. And one thing that will happen automatically, when a state has been in debt to the federal government for 2 consecutive Januaries, this credit will start reducing by 0.3%, or in other words, the tax rate will go up by 0.3%. So because we've been in debt for 2 years, effective January 1, 2012, the tax rate will become 1.1. The next year it will be 1.4. After that, 1 point whatever. And that's about $21 a head per year, and then you keep adding $21 per year. Now, I'll address one rumor about what's going on in Washington right now, so you can have that in your head as we discuss the numbers. President Obama's budget proposed about 3 things. Number one, it proposed a 1 to 2 year delay of these credit reductions.